I'm Tom Garrett. My family has farmed the same land in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley for 4 generations. What I know, I learned from them, and I made this channel so I can share it with you. Let's get into it. There's a row in our south field. My grandmother never planted the normal way. Same soil, same seed, but it always outperformed everything around it. I didn't understand it as a kid. I just knew we harvested that row last because it kept producing longer than the rest. A single planting method, quietly dropped from most textbooks around the early 1900s, can triple what you get from the same ground. Not with fertilizer, not with new seed, just with how you place it. Most people were never taught it, and once you see it, you won't plant the old way again. My grandmother always said, the soil is doing more work than you think. The mistake is treating it like it isn't. In 18th century France, market gardeners in Paris were producing year-round vegetables on less than an acre using intensive bed systems, documented as early as the 1760s. They didn't have synthetic fertilizer, they didn't have tractors, but they understood spacing, layering, and root depth in a way we've mostly forgotten. In 1845, English gardener John Loudon wrote extensively about close planting and soil coverage, not as a theory, but as standard practice. His work influenced small growers across Europe who were feeding entire towns from compact plots. And in the United States, before 1920, extension bulletins from places like Cornell and the USDA actually described variations of this same method, but they disappeared as mechanized row farming took over. Not because it stopped working, because it couldn't be scaled by machines. On this farm, we learned anything that requires attention instead of horsepower tends to get left behind. The math on this is simple. Industrial agriculture optimizes for acres per hour. This method optimizes for yield per square foot. Those are 2 very different goals. And if you're working a backyard, a quarter acre, or even 5 acres, the second model is the one that pays. Here's what they stopped teaching. It's called staggered deep row planting. Some call it intensive block planting. My grandmother just called it planting it right. Instead of single rows spaced wide apart, you plant in offset rows, tight spacing, but with depth variation in the root zone. That's the part most people miss. You're not just organizing the plants above ground, you're stacking them below it. Step 1, you stop thinking in rows. You start thinking in beds. A standard bed is about 30 inches wide. That's narrow enough to reach across without stepping in it. Soil stays loose. That matters more than most people realize. You loosen the soil deep, 8 to 12 inches, but you don't flip it. You keep the layers intact. I use a Broadfork for this instead of a tiller. It breaks up the soil without destroying the structure. Step 2, spacing changes. Instead of one line of plants every 18 to 24 inches, you plant 2 to 4 staggered rows within that 30-inch bed. Carrots, for example. Instead of a single row, you plant 3 rows in a triangle pattern. Each plant is offset from the one beside it. That alone increases yield. But here's where it triples. Step 3, root depth staggering. Most people plant everything at the same depth and let roots compete in the same zone. That's where yield gets capped. In this method, you slightly vary planting depth and encourage vertical separation in the root systems. Shallow-rooted crops sit near the surface. Deeper-rooted crops are spaced and planted to draw from lower layers. You're turning 1 layer of soil into 3. My grandmother always knew her spacing before she planted a seed. Let me give you a real example. Take lettuce and radishes. Standard method, separate rows, separate space. This method, same bed. Radishes go slightly deeper and tighter. Lettuce sits shallower and wider. Radishes mature in 25 to 30 days. They're gone before lettuce fully expands. Same soil, 2 harvests, no extra space. That's not luck, that's the model. Another example, corn, beans, and squash. People know it as the 3 Sisters method, used by indigenous communities across North America for centuries before European settlement. Corn grows vertical, beans climb the corn, squash spreads low and shades the soil. But what most people miss is the root structure. Corn pulls from deeper layers. Beans fix nitrogen near the surface. Squash roots spread shallow and wide. 3 levels. Same ground. Nobody writes this down anymore the way it used to be taught. Back to the method. Step 4. Eliminate bare soil. Bare soil is wasted production. In this system, every inch is either growing something or about to. That reduces water loss, suppresses weeds, and keeps microbial life active. My father used to say, if you can see dirt, you're losing something. Now let's talk numbers. A standard single row carrot bed might yield 1 to 2 pounds per 10 feet. Using staggered planting, same space, you can push that to 3 to 5 pounds. Lettuce heads per bed can double, sometimes triple if you succession plant properly. Beans, instead of 1 flush, you stagger varieties and get continuous production for weeks longer. And here's the part nobody tells you. Quality improves. Plants grown in balanced competition tend to develop stronger root systems and better flavor, slower, more even growth. That's why small growers using this method often outperform larger farms at market, even at higher prices. About halfway through my first season running beds this way, I realized something. We weren't planting more. We were planting smarter. If this is the kind of thing your family never talked about, how to make a small piece of land produce like a much bigger one, that's exactly what this channel is here for. Hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. Now, mistakes to avoid. First, overcrowding without planning. This method is not just plant more. If root systems overlap too aggressively, everything suffers. You need to match crops by growth speed and root depth. Second, compacted soil. If your soil isn't loose, this method fails immediately. Roots won't separate. Water won't move properly. I'd test your soil first and add a simple compost blend if needed. It makes a bigger difference than most people expect. Third, ignoring timing. You're stacking crops in time as much as space. Fast crops come out before slow crops take over. That's the rhythm. We've been doing this longer than I've been alive, and timing is where most people get it wrong. Now let's bring it down to what you can do this week. Start with one bed, not your whole garden. One bed, 30 inches wide. Loosen the soil deep. Pick 2 crops, one fast, one slow. Radishes and lettuce, or spinach and carrots. Plant them in staggered rows. Pay attention to how the soil behaves. Moisture, growth rate, spacing, then adjust. Next season, expand. On this farm, that's how everything scales. One piece proven, then repeated. It's not complicated. It's just patient. And once you see what one bed can do, you stop thinking in rows entirely. If this changed how you think about planting, subscribe. Every week we cover one more thing the Garrett farm figured out. Next week, grow food. Indoors forever. No garden, no sun, no soil needed. $30 setup. I'll see you there. If you're setting up your first bed, I've listed the exact tools and seeds we use down below. Nothing fancy, just what works. Happy growing.